So tip number one for making your line lay nice and flat, when you girth hitch it around the tree, if you can just take it and pinch the line so that when it pulls through and you tighten it, it comes out flat. If you don't pinch it, it's going to tighten itself and lay like a nice razor edge when you tighten it. So all you have to do is pinch it between your fingers and start to tighten it on its own. And then when it comes out, it's going to lay really, really nice and flat all the way out. So tip number two is to use a line lock. If you tie the knot that we taught in our first video, it can be really nice and flat if you pay attention, but a line lock keeps it flat no matter what. We have these nice custom ones. You can also just use wrap rings if you're a climber or a chain link. But you put a bite of the line through, make sure there's enough extra, and you're just going to thread it around. So you're going to hold it, thread it around, and take that same piece, push it back through. Okay, so you can see that. It just goes through all the way, it makes a spiral. Then you take your carabiner and just clip it in to the inside loop. And boom, it tightens itself and everything lies perfectly flat. Tip number three for having a fantastic line experience is get your anchor, your solid anchor point as close to the tree or the pole as possible. A lot of people will rig their slackline like this, just wrap it around, take their carabiner and clip it in here. But that gives you a lot of sag because this is going to move up and down, and effectively you're not creating a nice anchor point. So you want it to be as close as possible. The second option, which we like better, is to actually take one end of your anchor piece, thread it through the other end so that it girth hitches itself around the tree. Now the anchor point is pretty close, and since our new lines use static webbing for the anchor pieces, this is pretty solid. You get a little more length out of it, and this is a great way to extend the length capability of your line as well, because now I just gained about 2.5, 3 feet. But for a really predictable line, what you want to do is build the anchor as close to the actual tree as possible. So in this case, I would want to tie a clove hitch right where my thumb is. So I could just tie a clove hitch here, clip this in all the way, clip it into the other side, and now my anchor is really close to the tree. So this would be my preferred method for building this anchor here. So one more option is, especially if the tree is fairly small, this would not be a very effective anchor to just attach it, because I've got all this space here that can create a lot of movement. With this tree, I would try wrapping my anchor piece around twice, and you'd see when that happens, the anchor ends up really close to the tree, which is really nice. So you just give it an extra wrap. Sometimes you might have to wrap it 3 or 4 times, but I could keep it right here, clip it off, and then that's a pretty nice tight anchor. So once you've got your line lock set up on one side and the anchor carabiner as close to the tree as you can get it using any of those methods we described, you want to make sure that both the carabiners have their gates facing the same direction. It's not super necessary, it just makes it nice, and you can see how both of these are going to open towards me and towards each other. That'll just make this part pretty easy. So for the kind of Z-drag simple setup, no ratchets, nothing like that, you're just going to take the rope or the line from the bottom here, make sure it's flat all the way down, so you're kind of looking, making sure it's flat so everything's nice and lined up. And then I'm going to pull it from the bottom and take it through the bottom of the carabiner that's on the anchor. So I'm putting it from the bottom here, up, pulling it back towards the line lock carabiner, putting it into the top. And I'm wrapping it back, so I'm making a big spiral here, putting it through the bottom. And here's the only tricky part. So this normally wants to be on top because it's just gone in second. I want it to be underneath the first wrap. So I'm going to create a little space here and slide my second wrap under the first. So it kind of hides there. Then I pull this back one more time, put it through the top, and I'm going to do the same thing. Create a little space here, thread it so it goes underneath. So that when I'm done, if I look at it from the side, everything's nice and flat with the loose webbing coming from the center, all the way to the very, very center. Because then to tighten it, all I do is pull, and as soon as I let go, the tension holds it there. All right, so it's pressing in on itself so it locks. I don't have to tie it off. I don't have to do anything. It's totally set. Fine. When I'm ready, when I've done my slacklining and I want to take it down, all I need to do is take my center strand, pull it the opposite way. And webbing is nice and slick, so it'll come out from under itself, like that. See, it just popped out from under itself. I can release it here, take it back, pull it the opposite way, and now my whole slack line is released. The fourth and most important tip for having a more enjoyable slacklining experience is to get a custom YogaSlackers slackline. There are various reasons for this, but one is that your carabiners will say YogaSlackers on them, as well as say designed for slacklining. Where else can you get a carabiner that is specifically designed for slacklining? And furthermore, we've practiced and researched enough. We now use lines that are made out of polyester instead of nylon, so they have less stretch. So this line right now is slack. This is old school traditional slacklining. They don't call it super tight springy line, right? It's slacklining. And because this has less stretch than nylon, I can still walk on it and it doesn't go all the way to the ground. With our old nylon lines, you'd have to really tighten them. So I can leave it loose. I can also take the time to tighten it and make it just as tight as the old lines, but it just gives more versatility. And finally, this distance is much smaller. In our old lines or with nylon lines, we recommended starting out about this far so you could tension a lot. This, you only have to start maybe a foot, 2 feet away, and you've got plenty to tighten. If I want to get it nice and tight, there we go. Now it has a lot of spring to it. So, get a YogaSlackers line.